As it would be, you've already heard that Rachel and I and Nikki have been visiting the leaders, the chief executives of the statutory organisations in Newcastle. And we had a meeting with the director of the commissioners for Newcastle and Gateshead, the Alliance, where we had the opportunity to discuss our concerns, the concerns that have been raised by people around Out of Hours. It was a very interesting dialogue. It was well received, and hopefully, because of the way we went about it, it wasn't a confrontational issue. We had a dialogue that was valuable, and the feedback that we were given at that time was that our letter had provoked them to re-look at their specification and make sure some of the points we had raised had been included in that specification. There's most probably two things I'd like to highlight. They did consult with the public, but it was actually out of date. It was old. It had been conducted in May 2012, and they'd asked a market research team, I think in January of this year, to do some further work. So we then had a more lengthy discussion around how we as Healthwatch Newcastle would like the public view to be taken into account, and how we'd like to work with them in the future, and that being around that if they're going to be doing something like this, they come to us straight away, they give us the heads up, they let us know what they're going to be doing, what their consultation process is, we could advise them if we felt it needs strengthening, and then that they came back to us with the outcome of that and how they were going to respond to it. It was a very good meeting. I think it set the tone well for working with the commissioners for health in the future. We're waiting to see what's happening with that. Now, I know Jill's got an update because she went to the latest overview and scrutiny committee for health.
That's right, and on the 12th of September they discussed it because they similarly had some concerns, and they were told that it's important that you don't see GP out of hours away from the broader context of urgent care, and that there is in fact an urgent care programme board, and that there is a paper which sets the GP out of hours in that context. And so they have agreed to provide the Scrutiny Committee with a copy of the paper that sets the whole thing into context and the detail of the consultation exercise. So one of the things that struck me about this is we need to be very clear about our working relationship with the Health and Wellbeing Scrutiny Panel.
Just for clarity, who's the they in the commissioners?
Who's the they?
Yeah.
It was the CCG who
was
providing the documents.
The two Newcastle ones?
Yes.
Well, actually, Alistair, they are
The
commissioned.
two together with Newcastle, or
They're commissioned for Northumberland, North Tyneside and Newcastle, which is why some of these issues were raised. So we are obviously linking with our commissioners. I copied the letter to the chairs of the other health watches, and in fact, Rachel contacted them, those chairs, to see whether they were actually actively doing anything, and they weren't.
just because I know that, just from personal experience, that the chains of communication within CCGs are not ideal, and those between CCGs are less than ideal as well. And from CCGs, letting people know, in the outside world know where they are in their commissioning cycle is, again, there's work to be done there.
Right.
Chair, I think this is a really important issue in itself, because I think it's probably the first sort of health issue you're actually discussing today, and I think it highlights just the confusion, because I don't know whether the Urgent Care Board trumps the CCGs. I mean, we have to do quite a lot of background ferreting around to even get this bit of information, and how open the Urgent Care Board is as well, because quite clearly there are a number of different issues which people might want to comment on
So
in
the
relation
Urgent
to our
Care Board
hours.
is between CC, it's not linked to the local area team, is it?
No, the Urgent Care Board is chaired by Relton Cummings from Newcastle City and East,
North and East.
CCG. It encompasses both CCGs.
It must involve the acute trust, surely.
Well, we haven't got the. I think this is part of the problem is out of hours is a really important service as far as the general public. are aware, because obviously probably everybody in this room has actually used that service at some point in the last few years. And because of the changing nature of the relationships of the NHS, it's actually quite difficult, I think, to see who's taking a decision and how it will be taken. It says here that new providers start providing them on the 1st of April. I don't know whether that's still the case, and given procurement timetables, I think that's highly unlikely, but I think this is for further discussion.
Just in general terms, something going out to tender, who would they be contracting with?
It could well be, it could be anyone. I mean, it could be.
Who's issuing the tender?
It's the
CCGs.
But it's for CCGs.
No, it's for the moment.
It's the number four. It's Northumberland, North Tyneside, and two Newcastle.
Yes, but it can be provided. When I saw the draft specification, as either a single provider or 3 or 4 different lots.
Right, so it's 4 different entities for some purposes coming together, Northern Tynes.
Yes.
So 4 CCGs, Northern Tynes, saying want to put out a tender.
But it can be provided certainly in the 3 different geographic areas by different providers, or it could be provided as a single provider.
I think we've got to see what comes back from the tender exercise, which will be running for 3 months, I guess. So it went out on the 1st of August. So we need to make contact back with the CCGs around that time to see what's happening.
Yeah, I think that there's certainly something about the process itself and how can public involvement happen in a commissioning process, and particularly given the timetable, because they felt like they had to do this because of the introduction of the 111 service.
But particularly when commissioning is a murky area at the best of times, but we'd had previously thought, well, commissioning either happens through the CCG or if it's coming via the national route through the local area G. But now it's actually, we're looking at, there's an intermediate step, which is when the CCGs decide for some purposes we will clump together in ad hoc arrangements.
That would appear to be the
That
case.
is the case.
Because I believe that the 2 Newcastle ones were working together with Gateshead more, but they're not for this.
The service in Gateshead is provided by a GP cooperative who are based in Gateshead. The service north of Tyne is provided by the Northern Doctors Urgent Care.
So essentially, for any given contract, we're not sure as yet with the conditioners, mainly because they could change shape.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. The thinking, this is my thinking out loud. I think the reason why they've gone as the 3 or 4, we count Newcastle as 2, and I'm just remembering there are 2, is because that's how the service is currently provided. So I think it's for me, the interest is going to be in terms of what comes back. And I think it'll be interesting to see how it reads and what response there's going to be.
And I think particularly for members of the public, there might be issues about where you go for care, what happens at the edges of those services, things around transport, things around mental health services, things around general out-of-hours services. But it's the fact how these processes take place in the public eye and who's actually responsible for making the decision on it.
It's just to know, who to find information from about what's going on in the tender, where, who's pressing the button to say, right, it's going on to tender, because that's not established.
It is, and although there is a website that actually shows when things are going out to tender, when they've gone out to tender, rather than gives the information beforehand.
And I think that's why we had the dialogue with the commissioners about if this is sort of thing is happening, will they please come to us? I mean, the timing's difficult this time because we are new, but hopefully that's going to be happening. I mean, everyone we've spoken to has been in full agreement that they want to involve us from an early stage. So let's see what happens. I mean, who knows what will come out in the wash. So is there anything else from Rachel's paper, manager's report?